Welcome to another episode, another edition of The Real Deal. I'm your host, as always, Courtney Harden. Glad to be here. Glad to be with another episode on this snowy, rainy day here in Philly. It is nasty out here and cold, but that's the way it is here in the East Coast. But I'm glad to be back with another episode. We're live here on Roku TV. March 12th, March Madness is around the corner as well. So again, thanks for everyone that's tuning in. We're live on Roku TV, BS3 TV Network, also live on Facebook and Instagram, Twitter, YouTube as well. So check it out. Check out all of our shows on the BS3 network, BS3 network.com. So you can get all the content there as well. So just check out the website, BS3 TV, BS3 network is the spot there. Excited for another great episode. You can follow this show on Twitter at Get the Real Deal. Also follow on Facebook, facebook.com/ Get the Real Deal. Just Google The Real Deal with Courtney Harden. You could get all the shows, all the past episodes. You can find it on Google Play, Spotify, all the podcast platforms. Hit me up on all social media platforms, whether it's Instagram, Twitter, Facebook as well. Shout out to Ivan Dawkins himself, Doc there. He's got quite a few shows on the network as well. Again, we have great shows across the platform, across the BS3 network platform. We got shows about sports, spirituality, movie reviews, um, TV reviews. We get a little bit of everything, social things that we talk about. We talk about a little bit of everything. So if you have an idea for a show, or if you want to jump on the network, please do. We are always looking for new content, new shows, new podcasters. It's an entire family of shows. Like I said, it's not just sports. It's all things spirituality and movie reviews and TV reviews and social issues. We talk a little bit about everything. That we got you covered on all. I mean, I think we got like 30 episodes. I think we got like 30 shows on the network now. So the network just keeps building and grinding. BS3 Network is where it's at. Find it on all social media platforms, find it on all podcast platforms, Google BS3 Network, and you can just get all the content there. So shout out to the entire network as well. So yeah, I got a big show today. It's a lot of stuff is happening in the month of March. I mean, you got March Madness. The conference tournaments have begun, so seedings and teams are trying to get where they're going to be. Selection Sunday is tomorrow for March Madness. It's always exciting time for college basketball fans, and that's for the men's and women's. Shout out to the women as well. March Madness, so not just the men, the women as well. So a lot of great games coming up in the next couple of days. So check that out. I'm gonna be in quite a few around this time, around March Madness. I'm in a lot of different uh brackets. Like my work does. They do a bracket challenge, so I'm always into that. That's for money. So gotta try to win that. And the funny thing is with that, the last couple of years, not 2020, because 2020 got shut down because of the pandemic, but uh not 2020, but 2019, I got third, and it was just short a couple of points from money. And then 2018, my wife, she played in it, the March Madness challenge in 2018, and she got in the top five as well. I think she was third or fourth as well. She was up at the top most of the time. So I'm gonna win this year. So I'm just letting it out there. So anybody that's playing against me, I'm just saying it, I'm going to win these bracket challenges. So be on the lookout for that. So it's always a fun time, March Madness, and all the brackets, and everybody has their Final Fours, and it's a good time. It's a good time just to watch it, and to if you're a gambler, you gamble on it, or you just love the games. Some of these Cinderella teams that come out of nowhere. These seeds that are like 12, usually a 12 upsets of five, or 11 and the upsets of four, or something like that. Number one seeds go down early sometimes, and it's like I said, it's a madness of March. I call it the madness of March. It's March Madness, madness of March. So that's like upcoming. So and this year's is totally uh opens wide open. This is one of the first years in a long time where there's not a clear cut favorite going into next week. Uh, there's been teams like Auburn. There's been so many teams that've been number one, and they've they've had some big losses as well. So yes, and Ivan says with the BS3 network here at the lunch break show, BS3 has won $500 prize. I will be entering that one too, because like I said, I'm going to be entering a bunch of these tournaments, bunch of these March Madness these challenges. And like I said, my work has one. That BS3 network will have. I did one last year, but I'm gonna let Andre Jones of the Lunch Break Sports Show, BS3 network has one too. So I'll be entering that $500 prize. I'm trying to just win money. That's what it's. I'm trying to win. So like I said, my work has one. I'll be entering a few others. I'll probably do the ESPN challenge one. Yahoo actually has one. So looking forward to that. But I'm going to welcome my guest on the show. She just popped on. So let me get her on as we speak. Hey, Gabby, how are you?
Hey, good. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. So I have on the show no stranger to the show. She has her own podcast, her own network as well. Boston Ballin, Boston Ballin. I have the host of Boston Ballin, Gabby Hurlbut. How you doing, Gabby, today?
I am doing really well. I appreciate that nice introduction, Courtney.
Oh yeah, they always, they always, and I don't know how many times we've done these shows together. I've lost
A
count.
lot.
I mean, you've been on my show multiple times. I've been on your show. I was just on your show recently, and also we did Tom Brady tribute when he retired. So again, I really always appreciate you and welcome you to the show as well.
Yeah, thank you. And I always appreciate your support of my show as well. Like every time I see you in the comments, I get so excited
Yes, yes, always, always.
on the
So
live stream.
yeah. So tell everyone that that doesn't follow you or anything, which you should. Everybody should be by now. Should be following you and your show, and the podcast. But let everyone know a little bit about Boston Ball and how it got started, and what you got coming up, and how you pick your guests and things like that.
Yeah, for sure. So I got started during the pandemic in December 2020, actually after being a guest on your show.
Hmm.
It kind of just inspired me to want to start my own podcast. So that's kind of what I did because I was like, what's something that I'm really passionate about talking about that I could talk about literally all day, every day? And then that obvious choice was Boston sports because that was like what I'm passionate about. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to start a Boston sports podcast. So I did. Been kind of growing it ever since. I've been really just pleased with the following that it's developed in the time that I've had the show, and just really looking forward to just continuing to grow and expand, and hopefully just do some new things in the rest of this year. But yeah, I mean, bring a guest on every week. It depends on who the guest is. Like I kind of reach out to them in different capacities to see if they'd be interested in coming on the show. It's a lot of different types of people like that do different things but are all really passionate about sports like myself, and are affiliated with some sort of sports related thing that our people are familiar with. So it just really
Right.
depends on who the guest is, but a lot of times it's through social media or networking or utilizing my other connections to get guests as well is huge. But yeah, it's been very, very fun. It's very exciting. I've been so happy with the guests that I have on the show, and just hopefully continuing to just grow and expand, and maybe stretch to more platforms as time goes on as well.
Yeah, and your show has grown so much. As you said, you started through the pandemic 2020. It was actually at the end of 2020, I believe, right? So it
It
was
was.
yeah, because I remember the first time, we connected and sometime in 2020, and I reached out to you and you said, I've never been on a podcast or anything like that, even or anything. And I said, no worries. I said, I found you on social media, and then at that time you were working for ESPN, and we were just talking off camera, and we just connected, and I got you on, and you told your story and everything too. And it's funny how you reached out and said, I got this itch now. I want to do a podcast and everything too. So, I just gave you a little bit of, not even just tips, just you just asked a few questions. I said, look, you just get you a computer, a phone, whatever, and just start recording and whatever you're passionate about, just get some topics and just talk about it. And you had it, and right from there you just took off. And now Boston Balling is everywhere. It's like on all social media platforms, on podcast platforms. So everyone follow Boston Balling, follow Gabby and her journey. It's a tremendous show. Like I said, I've been a guest on the show. I don't know how many times now and everything.
I love
Anytime you ask
it.
me, I jump on it. I know at least 5 times, but probably even more. But check out all the content and everything on Boston Ballers. So I really enjoy the show.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Yeah, it's definitely been really fun. I actually have like a funny story related to Boston Balling. So
Yeah,
I was at this like it's like a sports bar like near where I live that I like to go to with some of my friends. And so
yeah,
I was sitting there with a couple of my friends from work recently, and the people behind us, like I didn't know them really, never had talked to them before, but like something came up about like just sports and stuff because they overheard me talking about sports with like the people sitting next to us. And so
yeah.
their server told them like, oh yeah, like that's Gabby, like she has a sports podcast, because the server there like that knows me would like has listened to the show. And then one of the guys was like, oh really, like what's her show called? And he said Boston Balling. He was like, oh no way, like I actually listened to that show, like it came up on my like Spotify suggestions or whatever as a Boston sports podcast. And so like I listened to it, and then he came up and introduced himself to me, and he's like, I love your
Wow.
show. Like I just happened to come across it. He's like, I didn't know you lived like in this area though. Like you could have lived anywhere. I don't know. But like it was a weird story.
That's interesting. As you
Yeah.
say, you just never know where your show can reach. And like if as you said, it was just on Spotify suggestions, recommendations, and boom, right there, and he gets to meet you right there. That's an interesting story, and
It's
everything.
very weird. Yeah.
So we got, like I said, we got comments in the chat. Like I said, if you got any comments, he said, Gabby, are you an Eastie or a Southie?
I'm actually not from Boston.
Right, right. Yes, you're from
But like,
Boston. That's
but yeah, Southie is really, really fun.
all right. There
To
you
answer
go.
that question.
It's a good question. So
But yeah,
anybody has any
I am
questions?
from Connecticut.
Yeah, you're from Connecticut, and big Boston fan, all Boston sports as well. So, but yeah, if you guys have any chats, hit me up on here, Facebook, wherever. We're like, so we're all over the place. So if you have any questions for Gabby or anything like that, you had any questions about her Celtics who are killing it, we're gonna get into the Celtics that are they're doing their thing and everything too. But I want to start. Let's talk about March Madness, and I know you're a big fan of March Madness as well on the women's and the men's side. How much are you looking forward to this season? It's so wide open. The seedings haven't been, hasn't been they haven't done the seedings yet. So what do you think of this season so far? Do you have any favorites going into this next week?
Yeah, I'm super excited. I love March Madness. It's one of the best times of the year for me.
Hmm.
Huge college basketball fan. My dad, got me really into it at a very, very young age. With us I grew up so close to UConn. So kind of just grew
Yeah.
up like around that environment. So I'm super excited. I think there's going to be, there could be some surprise teams this year. I think that's always a like nice thing about March Madness is it's so unpredictable because there's always those
Yeah.
teams who kind of just come out of nowhere and go pretty far. Like there were a couple teams like that last year who nobody would have expected and went pretty far and kind of were the bracket ruiners per se, the teams that like kind of ruin everybody's brackets because they went a lot further than people thought they would. So there's always going to be teams like that, but like I think there's definitely teams who are just going to be like, right, like normal, like that you would expect to be good. Like, I mean, the top teams like Duke, UCLA, Gonzaga, like teams like that, obviously, I think are, teams that naturally I think will go pretty far because they're good and they're expected to, but I'd say there could be some surprise teams. I mean, like I'm
Right.
looking forward to seeing how like my UConn does because I think like they might be a little bit of a sleeper team this year too because I
Yeah.
think that they
Yeah.
they're a really solid team this year. Like not trying to sound biased, but I do think that like go further than people think that they might go. There's some people are saying like I could see UConn going to the Final Four, which I definitely could see that too. But I think, obviously they're in the Big East, which is tough. In general, there's a few good teams in the Big East. I mean, Providence had a really good season this year, so they are
Yeah.
going to be tough. Villanova is tough. So there's going to be a lot of good teams, I think, this year. But I think it's just it could really go anywhere. Like this is going to be a fun year because I think it's pretty wide open right now, and I think there's going to be some teams like I'm so excited for the selection show tomorrow because like I'm so excited to see in terms of seeding who ends up where. So I think there's going to be a lot. It's going to be a lot of fun this year. I think it's wide open, and I think people have a lot to look forward to.
Yeah, they do. I mean, that's you're right. And this season, like I said, has been such wide open. This is one of those seasons that is so unpredictable. There's not a clear cut favorite. You do have your favorites, like you said you have Gonzaga, you have yeah, Kansas is on a roll, Kentucky's starting to roll again. So those top teams, Duke. So you have those teams that are always the favorites, Baylor, but then you have Baylor that just got upset yesterday in their conference tournament.
Yep.
They got upset Auburn, they got upset just recently yesterday as well already. So it's so predictable. And then on top of that, you had these teams that were there was never a team that stayed at number one for a long stretch of the stretch. Usually you have a team that's okay, they're the clear cut favorite. Like last year it was Baylor and Gonzaga, and that was the final.
Yeah.
Baylor ended up winning. But you kind of had a feeling like, okay, these are the top two teams. These are the two teams that actually could make the final, the last two. And now this year, you don't have no clue. So that's the unpredictability about this entire season. You just don't know.
It's so
Whoever
true.
gets hot,
So true.
whoever gets hot, you just really don't. You really don't know. I'm looking at. I just really started to really get into college basketball this year. I usually wait till like later February, and I start to watch and see who's trending and all that. Just because, like I said, we played all these brackets, and you gotta be on point with the brackets and everything too. So
The brackets are tough and stressful, yeah, but
always.
that's the nice thing about it. I mean, I think, yeah,
Hmm.
you put that very well, like when you said, yeah, I mean, it's so unpredictable, and that's the fun part about it because like some team like can just come out of nowhere. Like even like Syracuse last year, which usually they do that, but Syracuse last year was like an 11 seed or something like that, and they went
Oh,
pretty far. But
right,
Syracuse
right.
usually has a history of doing pretty well in the tournament if they do make it. So it's usually always unpredictable and so wide open, and that's like the fun thing about it is there's always
Hmm.
going to be those first round upsets when you see like like a 2 seed or a 3 seed getting knocked off in the first round
Right,
to like
right.
that 15 or 14 seed that nobody would have expected. Like it's usually a given. It's just a matter of which one that's going to be, and it's stressful, but it's a lot of fun.
It's very stressful. I mean, I get all in, and I probably told you this before the last couple of years when March Madness gets ready, I get locked in. Like the next week, I'll be locked. I'll be like loaded and locked in. I'll have a couple shows and talking we'll be talking, matchups and things like that. But as soon as the selection show happens, I get like that's just like just blank. I just blank out. Like, okay, here we go. I'll get my brackets. I'll get all the information, and I get so much information. I get so overloaded, and every year I keep telling myself, okay, I'm just gonna check out a couple of sites and that's it. But I have like 10 sites and I'm looking at all these predictions and I'll do my own thing. And my wife always says, she said, you just get too far into it. Like she said, just take it, just get like one thing, hey, one prediction thing, and then make your own predictions like that. But I'm so me, I get so like with the research, I get so too far ahead. I can't help it.
Some people do that. Some people look so deep into like the stats
Yeah,
of like
right,
why
right.
this
That's
team
me.
might be this team, and it's like sometimes you have to just go with it and pick teams. Like one of my
Yeah,
friends
you're
used
right.
to do the March Madness pool that my dad and I organize every year, and like she doesn't follow college basketball, but she was just
Hmm.
picking teams based on like the team names, like the team mascots or something, and like she had like no strategy to it, and she ended up doing pretty well.
Yeah, that's what happens, and I can't. And that's something I can't do. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's just ingrained in me. I just have to do the research, and like I said, for the next week, I'll just be reading all types of stuff. If I have a couple hours, I'm just going to be reading, researching. I tried that last year, not really. The last year was really unpredictable because of the pandemic, and some teams didn't play a lot of games. Some teams only play like 20, like less than 20 games, and you just didn't really know. Even though you said Gonzaga and Baylor were the favorites, but just didn't know. But it's yeah, I have to I get too invested in it. And so we'll see what happens. And so we got a couple of comments here. Ivan Dawkins says he went to Boston in October for his birthday. Went to Cowboys, Patriots, Stars, Bruins, and Astros, Red Sox in the playoffs. In addition to a ton of sightseeing, sailing, whale watching, New England Aquarium, amazing food, especially the lobster rolls.
Boston is great, and I agree with all that stuff. I actually was at Cowboys versus Patriots this past season too,
Mm-hmm.
so that's funny. That was a
Yeah,
great game, but
that was a really good game. That was a
it
really,
was
really good
it
game.
was
I
a
remember
really,
that game.
really good game to be at for
Yes,
sure.
right.
Um,
Shout out to Vince Sutters, the creator of BS3 Network. Good morning and everything. And I says, do you play all your brackets the same or do you mix up? I never mix it up, and that's the thing. I'll play one bracket,
really?
yeah, and then
Oh,
I just spread it across whatever leagues I'm in or brackets I'm in, challenges. I just take one bracket and go. If I do, maybe I may do two, but usually I just do one bracket and just spread it out throughout. And so, maybe I could do a couple more brackets, but that's time consuming. Then you got to just pick different ones. I just pick one bracket. My final four is the same, and then I just spread it across all the bracket challenges I can do. So, how many brackets do you usually do if you like or challenges do you usually get into?
usually two. So my dad and I organize one every year. We've been doing it
Yeah.
for a while. And it's a lot of fun. We get a lot of people, and usually like the people that have been in it before always do it again, and then we get new people
Mhm.
too. So it's a lot of fun. So but you can fill out two in that league. So
Yeah.
like you can fill out two brackets. So I put different ones just to give my maybe
Yeah.
hopefully raise my chances of winning. So like I fill those out differently. I put different upsets in some of them. And so that's a lot of fun. And then usually I always try to do like a second one with some of my friends, but I don't like to be in too many because, like you said, it is time consuming to fill out brackets.
Yeah, and you forget like which ones did I get into? Like
Yeah,
there
that's
was
true.
I was in this I was in this one, I was in this. Like I said, I'll do three or four normally. I'll do ESPN, Yahoo. My work one has one, and usually the radio the podcast network we will do one as well. So I'll be in like four or five different ones. So other than that, I used to be in like 10, 15 leagues, and now that's hard to keep up. You're like, I forgot which leagues I was in and
Yep.
everything too. So I
Exactly.
try to now limit it back, but I'll definitely be doing my research and try to win. I mean that's the main thing. We love those try to pick the right upsets. As you said, a 3 or 4 seed might go down early, a 5 seed go down, 1 seed usually go down a little earlier than expected too. So
Yeah.
there's never a time when all four number ones make the final four.
Yeah,
So
it's usually does not happen because
no, no,
like the one seeds usually always make it past the first round. Like
normally,
there's
yeah.
only really been one time when a 16 seed beat a one
Yeah, the
seed.
Virginia. Yeah,
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 that was crazy when Virginia lost. But
yeah.
usually in general, the one seeds like you can be pretty safe with picking, like at least for the first round or so, maybe first couple. But then once you get after that, it's really just anybody's game. Like you never know. Once you get to like the Sweet 16, it can get really, really tough to pick teams after that.
Oh, yes, it definitely can. That's where the top seeds usually can go down, unless, like I said, unless they get on a run and so we'll see. It's like I said, this is one of those seasons where you just don't know. So it's gonna be madness, as they call it, March Madness.
Yep.
I call it the madness of March. That's why I always call it, and that's what it is. So, but let's get
Yep.
into I know one of your favorite sports, baseball. So Major League Baseball. Last week I had a show, and we will say, "Will we have a season?" That was the name of the show last. Yeah, yeah. So during the lockout, there was a Major League Baseball lockout. So the lockout finally ended a couple of days ago. And I said, "Well, this is perfect. Gabby's coming on the show. We'll talk about this, the lockout." So the news just Thursday, the lockout ended, which I'm glad it did. I know you were too. But what was your initial reaction when the lockout finally ended after 3 months?
Yeah, I was at work and I wanted to like scream at my desk, but I knew I couldn't do that. So like I was super excited. I was like starting to really get worried about it. I was like, well, they can't afford to not have a season. There's too much revenue they're going to lose, and both sides
Right.
I think knew that. And like, I've had some baseball guests on my show recently, and they were kind of saying similar things. Like, there will be a season. They know they can't afford to not have a season, and they were like both sides want to work something out. I think it was more just for me, the frustration what came from the lack of urgency when it started, because they started to show urgency towards the end to work something out. But I'm like, where was this for the whole last 3 months? Like, why did they not show
Right.
this much urgency when the lockout started? Because at that point, they weren't meeting as often. They weren't really like having as long of meetings, and it just didn't seem like they really cared to work something out. So now they finally did, and they didn't have to end up canceling that many games, and they're going to be able to make those games up anyway so that they can maintain a 162 game season. Um
Right.
so I think that's really, really good. I'm super excited because I think, baseball fans need baseball, and it was really going to start to suffer. And I think they were going to start to lose fans if they had to cancel more games. So I think it's a
Yeah.
really, really good thing for baseball fans that we get baseball now.
Yeah, because they was in real jeopardy for not being able to have a full season, and now that they finally got it done, as you said, I agree. I think that there was no urgency in the beginning until they started losing games, and I think the players they weren't they weren't too threatened about. And I know the owners and they were talking about we're gonna keep canceling game. I think the players were just calling their bluff, like we're gonna get a deal done. So the players to me weren't too worried, but the owners were super worried. But but they were part of the problem. We were, like I said, we'll talk about this last week. We were talking about everything comes down to money, and it always comes down to money. So when the leagues are losing money, when the baseball leagues losing money, it's as you said, it's too much money to be lost. So when they started canceling weeks of games, and they're like, well, if we can start in April, we got to get a deal done soon. So then the urgency kicked in, and then they finally made a deal and everything too. So now you got opening day is April 7th. Full 162 games schedule will be played. Spring training starts. Well, started already. It started like this weekend and everything too. Voluntary reports. Mandatory is tomorrow, so all players will be. So spring training games start March 17th. So which is exciting. So what are you looking forward to seeing now? What's coming up now in the next couple of weeks? I know there's a lot of free agency still out there and everything. I think that's a big key and everything too. But what's some of the things when they made this deal? What you're looking forward to coming up in this upcoming season?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely going to be fun and chaotic the next couple of
Yeah,
weeks where all the free agents go,
yeah.
and I think that's going to be a lot of fun. I mean, like, I'm really excited to see who like my Red Sox end up with. I think
Mm,
there's a lot of good free agents out there. I think a lot of teams have been like working hard. There's been a lot of texts exchanged, I've heard, and just a lot of like outside conversations that we don't know about yet. But I think it's going to be just a race per se to that finish of that of signing those free agents before opening day. And so that's what
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to. But yeah, also I'm really looking forward to seeing like who what surprise teams kind of come out of this year. Because last year I
yeah,
think there were, a couple of teams that surpassed expectations that people didn't really expect, like San Francisco was a huge example of that last year. I think nobody really expected them to go as far as they did last year. So I'm going to be excited to see if they can do that same thing again. I think,
yeah,
the AL East obviously is going to probably be the best division in baseball again. I think it's going to be another situation like last year where you have four teams in that division who are all
Yeah.
fighting for it because, I mean, people severely underrate Toronto still. I think they're a
yeah.
very, very
Hmm.
solid team, and I think they're going to be scary this year because they missed the playoffs by one game last year, and it's because of the division that they were in. Had they been in a different division, they would have probably gotten in. Like they could have won other divisions. They literally had three other teams in their division that were really, really solid. And so I think that's going to be similar this year. I think like the Rays, Red Sox, Yankees, and Blue Jays are all going to be fighting for that division this year. So I think once again, that's probably going to be the most intriguing division to watch this year.
Yeah, I agree. 100% agree. I think that the AL East is always loaded, and you just don't know which team is going to come out. And the Toronto, just reading some of the previews and stuff. Some publications and some websites have Toronto actually winning the division. So yeah, I mean, you said you can't sleep
Right.
on Toronto this year. But you just said it's going to be tough. You got the Red Sox, you got the Yankees, you got the Rays. And I've seen some say the Rays might take a step back, but you can't sleep on them either. You can't count them out as well, even though they've lost pitching and everything too. But the free agency is here now, so you don't know. Like teams are going to be scrambling trying to find pieces. There's a lot of relief pitchers that are still available. So if you need relief pitching, this is the time to get it. So I'm looking forward to see what this next couple of weeks in the spring training. They said they're a month. They're a couple of weeks, I should say, behind. But now they're going to just ratchet up. I was looking forward to see just games, just to see the games on TV, even if it's spring training. I'm just looking forward to that. Like you said, spring training starts March 17th. Free agency, begins immediately. They begin already immediately. So there's like playoffs expand to 12 teams beginning this season as well. Another thing too, want to ask you about the National League adopting the DH starting this season. What do you think? What do you think of that move with the National League doing that?
Yeah, I like that. I've always been pro DH for everybody,
Hmm.
because I really think that it's beneficial, and I think it's it's almost like the National League in a way. Like pitchers in the National League had like a little bit of an advantage over American League pitchers in the sense that like whenever they pitch, they always got to pitch to like a pitcher as one of the hitters, and
Right.
it's like no offense to the pitchers, but like that they're like not as tough to face as a pitcher because they don't
Mm,
they like they're not as they're just not as good as at hitting as the people who hit more often. You know what I mean? So I feel like there was
yeah.
kind of like always that part of the lineup where they could kind of like pitchers could relax a little bit because they were facing another pitcher, and that's not really their forte, which it's not supposed to be because pitching is their forte. So I think it's going to be fun to see the National League implement that too and how that gets utilized. Because I think that kind of creates a little bit more competitive in both leagues. So I really, really like that they did that. I was waiting for them to eventually do that.
Yeah, definitely. And it's almost like they were behind the eight ball all the time. Like they just like I said, they wanted pitchers to hit and could continue. But a lot of pitchers they weren't good hitters at all. You there was a
Exactly.
you had there were the few that was okay, but it was almost like it was just an extra out. It was like an immediate out and everything too. So now that they are finally at that end, they talked about it for years and they finally adapting that. We'll see how that goes. And now that they have that extra roster spot where you can just get a DH and they just have some of the better hitters are DH are in that DH slide. You just slide them in, especially if they're not good defenders, a good defense out there. They can just play DH every day, just concentrate on hitting, and you have some of the better players that are DH hitters. So I'm interested to see how that goes. But yeah, I'm just glad Major League Baseball is back. They, like I said, they uh, finally got a deal done. Lockout has ended finally and everything too. So I know you're like super excited uh, to see what happens and what goes on with your Boston Red Sox. They made that surprise last season. So what's your expectation for them this season? I know playoffs and beyond, but they made the playoffs. They made a great run actually. But what's your expectations now? You think they have enough to get to the next level, get back to the World Series?
I think at the moment, no, but I do trust that they're making some moves still. And
Mm,
what the roster looks like now is definitely not going to be the opening day roster. I think they make hopefully a couple moves for some relief pitching because pitching was definitely their downfall last year. And at the end of the day, I mean, they went to the ALCS. They just faced an Astros team that was better than they were. And I think, pitching was kind of the blatant hole because the Red Sox have a great offense, like a great lineup. They had some great hitters on the team. So I think that I do expect them to make a couple moves for relief pitchers because there's a lot of relievers still on the market right now. So I think they make a couple moves there. And I do think they make a move for like another batter or two still because Hunter Renfroe gets traded and he was really key in that lineup in terms of his bat.
yeah.
So I think that they find somebody to come in to replace his bat in the lineup. But overall, I think they kind of proved last year that they have chemistry. And I think that that's kind of what part of the reason that got them as far as it did, because like they have chemistry with each other that you didn't really see with a lot of other teams. And I think Alex Cora is an awesome manager. I think he's kind of perfect for Fenway. And, like I think some players like they brought back Jackie Bradley Jr., which like that didn't really sit well with fans because, people don't think he's great on offense. But I mean, he knows Boston. Like he's a veteran player. Like he's played in Boston, so he knows the environment there. I think he'll be a good
Yeah.
leader to have in the locker room on the team. And his defense is obviously outstanding. I mean, he's one of the best like defensive center fielders in baseball. So I think from a defensive standpoint, that'll really help too. But I don't think that he's here to replace the offensive aspect that Hunter Renfroe brought to the team. So I think they'll bring in somebody else to replace that, hopefully. But I think overall, I think they can do it. I definitely think that they have the potential to do it because they showed that last year. I mean, they were in a really, really tough division and they ended up being the team that came out of that division like at the end of the day in the playoffs because they beat the Yankees and they beat the Rays both in the playoffs. And
Yeah.
so, and those are obviously tough teams as well. So I think I'm excited for the season for them. I don't think it was a fluke. I think that people just underestimated them at the beginning of the season last year because I kind of said I do think they can do better than people think that they might. And so
Yeah.
I think that they have the potential to do it. I just think and I think once we get the opening day roster and have a good sense of them as a whole, like then I do feel like they can do it, but it's going to be a tough division, like we talked about before. So, the Rays are still going to be there. The Yankees are still going to be there. Obviously, Toronto improved as well, so that's all stuff to look out for. But at the end of the day, like I do think that they have the potential to be able to go back to the ALCS and hopefully even the World Series. I just think that it's they still need to make a couple more moves, but overall, yeah, they surprised people last year. I think having Alex Cora has been awesome for them. I think he's a great manager, and I think they have something special going in Boston with that chemistry that not every team has.
Yeah, that's I think that's the key point, their chemistry that they have. And as you're right, there's so many moves still to be made. It's early, and I know teams that you were talking earlier about, they were texting each other and teammates and trying to figure out, okay, we got to get certain players here if we when free agency had is hitting. Says
Mhm.
now it's just like I said, it's gonna be a scramble. So I guess like I say, you have to wait to see what the final rosters are going to be for these teams. But the Red Sox do have the chemistry. I think you said pitching will always, and I think all pitching is always the for every team that it has to be improved because Boston has a great offense. Like I said, they're loaded offensively. It's just the pitching. Can they stay healthy? Can the top of the rotation stay healthy and really get things done? I think that's always uh, for a lot of teams going into it because even with the Yankees, if you want to go with someone with them, yeah, they have great hitting, but their pitching is always lackluster. After they're top of the rotation, their pitching and
It's true.
defense is always lacking. So that's what a lot of teams, it seems like they're good at the top of the rotation, but when it gets to that mid to bottom rotation, that's where the money gets. But especially the playoffs, you need a good 3-4 solid starters in
Yeah,
the playoffs to
you
be
do.
able to make a role. Because if not, your number one starter is going to have to start 3-4 games in a 7-game series, and they usually get burnt out.
Yeah, for sure. And I think to that point, I think Chris Sale is going to be a huge factor this year because
Yeah.
obviously the guy was coming off of Tommy John last year, so you had to expect that he wasn't going to be like the Chris Sale that everybody's used
Hmm.
to seeing. Like he was obviously a little rusty because he was in recovery. He was coming back from Tommy John, and I talked to some baseball people and. Like I had like a Red Sox like minor league pitcher recently on my podcast, and he was basically saying like it takes people longer to recover from Tommy John than people think. Like that's like a really tough surgery, and like so people like fans were kind of giving him some hate, but it's like yeah, I mean you had to expect that. I mean the guy like
Yeah.
like he you had to expect he wasn't going to be like back to being the Chris Sale right away, but a lot of pitchers come back from it when they're recovered and they're better than they were before. So so maybe that'll happen with him. I think he'll have a better season this year. Now that he's further along in his recovery process, so I do think he
Right.
have a better season than he did last year. And I think that's going to be a huge thing. And so I think if you can get him as like the solid number two who like you can kind of rely on more now this year,
Right.
I think that's going to be huge for the Red Sox.
Yeah, it's big, huge. I mean, you're right. That's going to be if Chris Sale could be the Chris Sale that he was 2, 3 years, 3, 4 years ago. That's a huge. It was huge for the Red Sox, and and it's not like just like getting a free agent. It's like he's there already. It's almost like getting that. You're getting a guy that's already been in there and on the team. It's almost like getting like somebody like a Kevin Durant coming back to Brooklyn. It's like, oh yeah, we do have this guy Kevin Durant that could actually take our team to the next level. And Chris Sale could be that type of guy where that for the pitching that to help the Red Sox. And yeah, it's gonna be. I'm looking forward to this season in baseball. I know you are too. Like I'm looking for the mass scramble next week when it's like March Madness for baseball. It's like they started this spring training is like March Madness just to see where all the moves go, where the players are gonna go. Because even here with the Phillies, there's some buzz. I don't know how good they're going to be because there's always a buzz there, but then they end up not playing well at all or whatever. Whatever happens, it's either the offense or the pitching. There's not enough pitching, and Bryce Harper had an unbelievable year last year, but he didn't get no help. He had no help on
Yep.
either side on the offense or so they're in games where he hits a couple home runs and that's the only 2 runs they get, but their defense is lackluster and everything too. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how the teams. I guess got to wait for the next couple of weeks to see what goes on. But let's transition to some NFL and then we'll end with some NBA. The NFL, all the moves with the quarterbacks now that just happened. Russell Wilson goes to Denver now. So now Denver has their quarterback. You see how long Wilson, how many more years he's got. I think that was a solid move. I think that was the missing piece that they needed, even though they're in a tough, we talk about tough division. They're in a real tough division, but they get their quarterback. Aaron Rodgers, not surprisingly, goes back to Green Bay. I just think that was just the drama of him and everything, but he goes to Green Bay. And then Carson Wentz, who I'm very familiar with as an Eagles fan, now he's back into the division with the Washington Commanders, which is still weird to say,
Yeah, it
the
is
Washington
weird.
Commanders
It
and
is. I'm
everything
still not used
too.
to it. I still keep saying
Yeah,
Washington football team.
yeah, me too. Watching football team, and sometimes I slip and say the other day, but it's like because you're so used to saying it for so many years and everything too. But yeah, the Washington football team, and but you got that going on, and other Deshaun Watson, the news with him, innocent in the case of all the 22 masseuse, the masseuse, with that whole thing. So now he's on the market to see what happens with that. But a lot of quarterbacks are moving and everything, but what was your take on all these quarterback moves and everything when you heard all the news about Wilson and Rodgers and Carson Wentz?
Yeah, I'm definitely with you on Aaron Rodgers. I feel like that was just a lot of built up drama. I don't think he ever was
Hmm.
actually going to leave. I mean, they were saying he really was considering Denver, which I do think probably for a period of time, maybe he was like evaluating the situation and saying, yeah, maybe I could go there. Like, I don't think it was out of the question per se,
Hmm.
but I do think at the end of the day, ultimately, like, he wasn't really intending to leave Green Bay. I think it was just all of this like drama built up. And then, like,
Yeah,
ultimately, like, he was going to stay. You know what I mean? Like, I was not really surprised by
yeah,
that move at all. Like, I just kind of saw that coming. Anyway, I think I would have been more surprised if he ultimately did end up leaving. Um,
yeah,
so
right,
that doesn't really surprise me. I mean, that he stayed, but then I think from that standpoint, though, I think Denver obviously was hoping that they could get Rodgers. That like maybe that was because I think they were trying to make a push for him
yeah,
to go
yeah,
there. And so I think when he decided to stay in Green Bay, that's when they quickly immediately made that move for Russell Wilson because it was shortly after the
right,
Rodgers news came out that they got Russell Wilson, and so I think they kind of made that move really quickly after that. And I really like that for them. I mean, like you said, they're in a tough division, but I think the Broncos had a lot of pieces last year that we kind of saw. Like they did not have a terrible season last year at all. Like it was frustrating for Broncos fans, I'm sure, but like they showed that potential because they have a really, really solid defense and they have some offensive weapons to surround a quarterback with. I just
yeah,
think it was a matter of finding that quarterback. And so I think if Russell Wilson can stay healthy for one, then I think that they could actually be really, really tough. And it's going to be fun to see how that division plays out because because all of the teams in that division now are pretty good, but pretty solid. So I think it's going to be fun to kind of see how that division plays out. But I think the Broncos can be right in the mix now because I think that's kind of exactly what they needed over there. Um,
hmm.
so that's going to be interesting. And then with Carson Wentz, I mean, the guy just keeps moving around. But I think, being healthy is going to be a big thing for him. But I think with Carson Wentz, like he was not bad with the Colts. I think it was just a matter of like, they faced some tough teams as well. And I think for him, it's a matter of finding like the right fit for him. Because I don't think he's a bad quarterback. I just think he hasn't been in the best situation yet for him that's allowed him to be able to succeed. And maybe that can be Washington. And obviously Washington's issue always seems to be a quarterback issue.
Yeah,
And so like so that'll be interesting for them as well because I think if they can find the right quarterback for them, then they can be tough. Because similar to Denver, they have a really, really good defense. And there's some solid pieces there as well. But I think Washington has always had a quarterback problem, and I think that's kind of what it was. And I think maybe they see something in Carson Wentz that can kind of help fix that for them. But you
yeah,
know, that division as well. I mean, the NFC East is I mean, kind of we all know kind of what that division looks like. In general, I think
yeah,
the Eagles
yeah,
were a surprise last year. I think the Eagles went a lot further last year than people thought. I think
yeah,
Sirianni did a good job. I think he's a good coach, and I think obviously the Cowboys we knew would probably win that division, but I think it's going to be I think it's going to be a closer division this year. I think the Eagles And but Washington, even potentially, if Carson Wentz plays well there, could be, they could give the Cowboys a run for their money this upcoming season, I think. So that's going to be interesting. I'm curious to see if Washington ends up being the right fit for Carson Wentz.
Yes, that's I think they have, and then you're right. Carson Wentz, he's getting a lot of heat again and everything
Yeah.
too. Because I think it's just, I think with him, the leadership skill, the leadership aspect of it gets questioned all the time. Like he doesn't take responsibility and everything too. And it just seems like like you said, you got to take some blame. And he did have a decent year last year, and it wasn't because I think he threw 27 touchdowns, only 7 interceptions. But I think it was in those big games where they were those mistakes. That's what was going. That was happening because even the last game against Jacksonville, which they should have won, they were on the verge of making the playoffs, and he struggled down the stretch. He threw a pick and a fumble against Jacksonville Jaguars, and Jacksonville just ran right through them, and that was that.
Yeah.
That's on Carson Wentz, and they thought going to Frank Reich. They gave up so much. They gave up so much for him, to get him there, and I guess the investment just didn't work out. So now he goes from Indy now to Washington. So we'll see if he can turn it around again in Washington. But I think to me, this might be his last chance to be a starter, because you get so many chances. And Washington was looking for a quarterback. Now I know that they try to they try to strike against Russell Wilson. They was trying to get again. They was trying to get him, and it just didn't work out. And I don't think Russ didn't want to play there at all. So he's like, I don't want to play in Washington or anything. So Denver ended up getting him. So Wentz was that place. So we'll see what happens there. I love the move to get Russell Wilson in Denver. I think Denver was a quarterback away for really contending. I think this makes them. I don't think that they're the favorites because you still got the Chiefs. I mean, they still got Patrick Mahomes, the Chargers in that division and the Raiders. So that the quarterbacks in that division is really, really good. It's like
Mhm.
top of the levy. That's going to be a tough division. But Russell Wilson now going to Denver, they have the pieces. They have a running game. They have solid receiving core, and their defense is solid. So getting someone like Russell Wilson there, who I think still has some game in him left, I think that was a really good move. And now Russ can cook, as they say. I think now it's not all about just having a running game. Now he can really put up those numbers, and he's only 2 years removed from having a real good year. MVP caliber year. So I think that was a good move too. And then Aaron Rodgers is like I said, it was only a matter of time where he just like he loves
Definitely.
that drama. He loves the attention on him. And
So true.
then yeah, he just basically all he did was he just upped his salary, what he wanted. Now he's gonna be getting like 50 million a year. He wanted to be the highest paid player, highest paid quarterback, highest paid player, and he's got his wish. So that's all it was. I think there was some, like I agree with you. I think there was some um, aspect that he wanted to, maybe play in Denver or Tennessee. There was San Francisco. There was all those type of things. But at the end of the day, it was Green Bay. I just think it was Green Bay. So, but now you got teams now that still need quarterbacks. Pittsburgh. They're maybe Deshaun Watson. Maybe. I mean, now that he's been cleared for the with the 22 women that had came out, and which is to me, I think that the story still. I think there was some truth to it
I think
personally,
so
but
too.
you know, but. Uh, but I think 22 masseuse, like, do you need that many, masseuses? Like, it's just, to me, the story just was, but like I say, he got cleared. He was proven innocent in that respect, but we don't know if he's going to be suspended by the league. That's another thing that he still could possibly do, but teams are going to go after him. He's a very super talented quarterback, top five, top six quarterback when he did last played. Where do you think Deshaun wants to go? Does it go to Pittsburgh? You got the Saints. They're still look for a quarterback. I don't know if Wentz is going to come back, but where do you feel that he could go? Does it go to Pittsburgh or any other team?
Yeah, I mean, I think there could be a lot of teams that might be interested in Deshaun Watson. I mean, like I mean, I'm very interested in like what the Dolphins do too, because I know they've
Mm,
expressed interest in
yeah,
some of these quarterbacks, and I still don't. I'm not convinced still that Tua is the guy. I don't think he's really shown yet still
right.
that like he can be the guy for them. So I think the Dolphins potentially could try to be in on Deshaun Watson as well. So I'm not really closing the door on that possibility. Whether
Right.
he'd want to play there, I'm not sure. I mean, because obviously the AFC East is a tough division as well.
Yeah.
The Patriots and the Bills last year were tough, and so I don't know whether he'd want to go there. But that's a team that I think we should watch out for. I think Pittsburgh, I could see him there. I think that Pittsburgh was obviously Pittsburgh had like a pretty decent season this past year, and I think obviously they had some struggles as well, and obviously when it came to playoffs they did, but I think we all knew Big Ben was on his last leg as it was, so nobody really
Yeah.
was surprised. I don't think by it being his departure, but I think that could be a place that Deshaun Watson could fit in and really thrive. You know what I mean, and kind of utilize what he has in that system. And I think joining that division, that would be interesting too, because I think if the Steelers got to Deshaun Watson, like that could put them right back at the top of that division. Because obviously the Ravens were good last year, but I think that the Steelers could be like really solid if they do bring in somebody like Deshaun Watson. But I think there's other teams. I think it's interesting you mentioned the Saints. That's another one, because it's like, what do
Mhm.
they do? Do they kind of roll with what they have, or do they bring somebody in as well? Because it's like, do they trust that Jameis Winston is the guy? I'm not really
Yeah.
convinced of that either. So I think that's definitely a possibility as well. But I think there's going to be a lot of teams that definitely need a quarterback, but also teams that are unsure of the quarterback they currently have that might try to be in on Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, yeah, he's gonna get uh some teams that are looking at him. A lot of teams. I know that even like there's been question with the Eagles trying to. I mean, that was even last year, but I don't know if the Eagles are gonna because he's coming with baggage, and a player like him,
Yep.
you just don't know what. And so you're gonna have to definitely do your research on Sean Watson just to make sure. Okay, he's been cleared, but let's just make sure that he stays try to stay on the right path. So there's a question here. Russ at Denver is going to be interesting. My question is, can they beat Kansas City? That's a really good question, and because I think the AFC in general, with all those quarterbacks, I mean, is loaded.
AFC's
I
going to
mean,
be stacked this year.
yeah, oh my goodness, you got Buffalo with Josh Allen. You got your New England Patriots. They're gonna be they should be improved. Again, they made the playoffs anyway, so they'll be improved. He said, you don't know what Miami, you really don't know. And then that's not even talking about Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals, who was just in the Super Bowl. This one on their run. So you got that. You got Lamar Jackson, coming back from an injury. So Baltimore, like I said, we don't know what Pittsburgh's going to do with on that in that with their quarterback situation. Baker Mayfield's still with Cleveland. Know that they're at odds with him, but we'll see what happens there. But they still got him with the Browns. We talked about the division with the AFC West with the Chargers and the Chiefs and now Denver with Russ and everything too. So you got that and the Raiders because Derek Carr's still a solid quarterback. I think that with that division, Tennessee, they're running it back with Tannehill. They still had the best record in the AFC. So
Yeah, and
you
they had all
can't
those
count.
injuries and everything during the
Yeah,
season
right.
too.
Yeah, yeah. Derrick Henry was out, and they still had the number one seed in the AFC. So you still got them. I thought the Colts, their quarterback now. They have no quarterback really. So they could be looking at somebody like Deshaun Watson. You really don't know, or even Jimmy Garoppolo. I mean,
Yep.
he's still
Still
out
got
there.
the
It's 49ers let him go. I mean, the AFC is stacked. So it's going to be tough for Denver to leapfrog some of those teams they're in the mix. I think they're in the mix, but I think there's still teams that are I think Buffalo, I think Kansas City, just to name a couple, just right off the top. But guess we see what else happens in free agency, which starts next week too. Another thing that starts next week. So much stuff is going on next week. But the NFL free agency, I think, is starts next week as well. So Denver's going to be interesting though, getting Russell Wilson. But I tell you, the NFC is not as stacked as the AFC.
Yeah, no, it's definitely not. The AFC is going to be really, really tough, but it's going to be
Mhm.
fun because of all
Yeah,
those quarterbacks and kind of like, the young quarterbacks who are going to be the
yeah,
future.
yeah,
It's going to be fun to watch all of them. And obviously I don't like the Bills as a Patriots fan, but
yeah,
Josh
yeah,
Allen
yeah.
is incredible. I mean, he's a great quarterback. He has a
Mhm.
lot of talent. The Bills are going to be really good once again. Definitely, I think they're going to have probably a similar season where they're going to be a tough team to beat. And I think, last year, obviously this past season, I mean, They were great. They played great. They played, Josh Allen played nearly perfect in that game against Kansas City. That just was a
Yeah.
wild game. But I
Right.
think,
Right.
when it comes to the Broncos, yeah, I mean, I think they definitely Russell Wilson, I definitely think like puts them a step up from where they were, like a pretty far
Yes.
step up, I
Yeah.
think, from where they
Yeah.
were, and I think they are going to be able to genuinely compete with the rest of their division. I think they'll genuinely be able to be closer to like the Chiefs and the Chargers. Whether they can beat those teams, I'm not sure. I think KC is obviously still really solid,
Yeah.
but KC's defense to me was shaky all season, and
Oh my goodness. Yes.
a question mark. And so I think that that's another factor to keep in mind when it comes to the Chiefs, because obviously their offense is great. Patrick Mahomes is great, but their defense to me was questionable. And so that's going to be something to watch too. I think Denver's defense is vastly better than theirs. And so I think it's going to be interesting to see that. But I do think the Broncos now are going to be closer to those teams in their division.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree with that. And like I said, still got the Bengals. They were just in the Super Bowl, and they got to address. If they address the offensive line, they have all the pieces to repeat and get back to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, they
So
were unbelievable. I mean, nobody saw that coming either, I don't
right,
think, really. Like
yeah,
that nobody saw them winning the division. I definitely didn't see them winning the division. I really
me
thought
either.
that maybe the Ravens would win that division, but
Yeah, I thought the Ravens were going to win that division too. I knew Cincinnati was going to be improved, but not like that. And just to get on a run and literally get on a run. Joe Burrow just had an unbelievable year, like I said. But they have to address the line because if not, he won't last in the league. Which is on this guy's too super talented for them not to address that offensive line. You got to
that
have a
needs to
great.
be the priority.
Yeah, got to definitely be a priority. I think in the draft they have to either in the free agency and draft just to fix that offensive line because even with Patrick Mahomes 2 seasons ago in the Super Bowl he was running for his life and in the Super Bowl so against Tampa Bay so and then they addressed the offensive line and they made it really far again back to the AFC Championship but yeah you got to have a good offensive line so all right last topic I wanted to before I let you go like I said we could talk for hours
Yeah, we
on all
could. We could.
topics. But I wanted to talk about some NBA, and we'll get to your Celtics in a minute. But what do you think of that Brooklyn Philly game that just happened a couple of days ago? When Brooklyn just came right here in Philly and really took it to them, and again the Eastern Conference is loaded as well. Boston State sitting right at fifth, so they're right in the middle and how much an improvement they had. The last time we talked, Boston was struggling and how
Mhm.
they've improved and got into the top five and now a threat to come out of the East. But what do you think of, for one, what do you think of the conference first? And how scary can Brooklyn really be if they play like that? And now they're the eighth seed right now.
Yeah, I think the Eastern Conference is tough. This is going to be really, really tough, but fun to watch down the stretch because there's a lot of teams that are right in the mix right now. And I think, like you said, I mean, that Brooklyn Philly game was wild. I mean, people were making fun of James Harden, I know, like because they were like,
Yeah,
oh, haha, like you know what I mean? But
yeah,
it's just like I think Brooklyn that trade I think was good for Brooklyn. I think it's going to prove to kind of
mhm,
be like more beneficial to them than
yeah,
had he stayed there. I think that that move needed to happen. I just think it wasn't really working there with him. And granted, like obviously last year they had injuries. I mean, like missing some key players. I think they would have gone deeper into the playoffs had everyone been healthy. To be honest with you, I think they might have been able to beat the Bucks last year had they been healthy. But I think overall, I still think overall it's going to prove to be beneficial that they like they made that move because I think it's going to be it's I think they're going to be a tough team to beat and obviously like we knew this like and it's hard I hate to say this because I don't like the Nets but like I think we all kind of saw this coming. Like we all knew that they had the potential to play like this and they had the potential to be
yeah,
a serious threat to everybody else, but they weren't able to really show that because you have Kyrie who couldn't play in all the games and like you have like
yeah,
KD wasn't fully healthy and like obviously the James Harden situation now. So it's like I don't think they really had a lot of opportunities to really show that they could be like that. But I think if they play like that, I don't want to play Brooklyn. I really don't. I think that they can make
no,
a serious run, which is something we knew that they could do like over the last couple seasons because of the talent that they had on that team. But I think it's
mhm,
really for them going to be a matter of everybody staying healthy. And I think if they can stay healthy, they can be really, really scary. But obviously, there's good teams in the East. I think it's going to be tough. The East is going to be tough, and like you said, I mean, with my Celtics, they've obviously started to figure things out. I think what they
yeah,
did at the trade deadline, I'm very happy with so far. I think they made some kind of strategical moves for people who kind of make sense with them. And I think, I'm bringing Derek White in as somebody who I really feel like
Yeah, that's
good
big.
for this team, like what he can provide in terms of the chemistry and everything. So I think that was good. And obviously, like Al Horford, like as of late, has been starting to play better. And I think, obviously Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. I mean, some people wanted one of them to be traded, but I did not agree with that at all because I was like,
Yeah,
these are two, superstar players who are going to be like the glue to me that's going to bring them a championship. Like you need to build the team around them. You can't get rid of one of them. Like to me, you have to be able to build around those two because I think like those two are what's going to bring you a championship. And I think the Celtics now, with how they're playing now, I think people are starting to get a little bit nervous because I think people knew that the Celtics had like that potential and they were just like, wow, like it's kind of weird that they're struggling like this. So I think in terms of other teams, like the Celtics, if they continue to play like this, I think they can compete with anybody in the East as well.
I totally agree with that. And the way they're playing right now, they've been on these win streaks. They're on another win streak now, and they're playing as a team. I think in the beginning of the season, it felt like Tatum and Brown were trying to just be like, okay, it's going to be us, and we're going to lead. Yes, we need you guys to be the lead players, the star players, but you got to get that chemistry together. You got to get your teammates involved, and I think they were just doing too much one on one. So it took them a little bit, and now, as you said, they're right in the middle of the mix. Like they're the fifth seed right now. So they're behind. They're only behind Miami, who's number one. I think the Bucks are two.
Mm-hmm.
Philly's three, and Chicago's four. So those are the top four teams. But Boston's right there, and they are a scary team because if they can get even if they stay fourth or fifth, they'll play either Chicago or Philly. And Boston usually has Philly's number. Even now, the way Philly getting James Harden and trying to implement him and everything too. The thing about Harden to Philly, I thought it was a good move. I thought it was a move that needed to be done because they had to get rid of Ben Simmons. But I think people forget that James Harden, that type of game that he just had against Brooklyn, those type of games he has in the playoffs throughout his career. He does go through those mixes of 3 for 18, and it can't make a basket, and super
So true.
talented player, but it goes to that. So Philly fans, I know they've been getting hyped up. They have every reason to, but let's not forget James Harden sometimes has those games. Now he could turn it around, but he has those games throughout his career where it's a swing a series. He had a couple bad games, swings a series, and then Philly's out. So Philly's got to make the finals. They got to make the conference finals at least with that move. But the East is loaded. It's going to be tough because I think the Bucks are going to be. I had the Bucks go into the finals when I did my predictions earlier in the year. So I still feel like they got the pieces again to run it back and get there again because they've been through it. Miami's going to be they're solid, they're tough as well. So there's a lot of teams, but Brooklyn's scary. If they just stay healthy, hopefully Kyrie can play full time and they can lift the mandate, which they haven't done yet. But if he plays full time and they can look like that, Brooklyn could actually make a run and get to a conference final again because not one of those top seasons, not want to play Brooklyn at all.
Oh, I don't. I certainly do not. I think Brooklyn, like this is the Nets team that everybody was expecting all season. I
Yeah,
think,
the
to
way
be
they
honest
look,
with you,
yes,
like, and I
yep,
think people are now starting to see that they are that team, and now people are like,
yeah.
oh crap, like we actually really do have to worry about Brooklyn.
Yeah, right. And if Kevin Durant is locked in, I mean, he's one of, if not the best player in the league, and I think he put the league on notice. Like, don't forget, I'm still here
I'm
when I'm
still Kevin
healthy.
Durant.
I'm still Kevin Durant, and if Kyrie's been on a little bit of a roll lately too, so he's starting to get it going. And I mean, they got Seth Curry. And they look the role players are stepping up. Out of Drummond, they got a big now that can actually contend against some of the other bigs in the East. Brooklyn is scary. They're a very, very scary team. Now they have to get out of that playing game, but if they get through that and get to the playoffs, it'd be a they. I don't know. I think it's a little too late for them to get on a run now to
Yeah,
jump
there's not enough games
ahead.
really for that.
Yeah, not enough games, right? To jump, they have to jump Cleveland, Boston. They have to jump some teams, but if they get in seventh or eighth seed, look out, look out for
I know.
Brooklyn.
I agree with that. Yeah, I think it's the East. That's going to be tough for everybody in the East. I think if they get in because they obviously, as we know, they're tough. But and I'm genuinely nervous about them, but I am worried about
Yeah,
other teams as well. I think it's not going to be easy for anybody. It's not going to be easy for the Celtics to make a run, but I do think, like, they had a really good win against Brooklyn. Speaking of Brooklyn, actually last
yeah,
weekend,
yeah,
that was a really intense, like, close game, but the Celtics played good basketball, and they beat the Nets, and that was a solid win for them. And so they're showing that they can beat some of the really good teams in the East. So from that standpoint, I'm looking at it as like, yeah, the Celtics are good, but so is everybody else that's going to be in there.
yeah.
Like,
Right, right.
I mean, like, it's tough, but I do think that the Celtics are capable of coming out of the Eastern Conference this year. And I haven't really been able to confidently say that the last couple of years as much, but like they are really, really clicking on both sides of the ball now. And I think that's what people were fearing about the Celtics, because they knew they had the talent. It was just a matter of like
Yeah,
figuring things out, like clicking when they needed to, and kind of making it work with the group of guys they have. And I think they're really starting to do that now. And I think that's going to be really, really good for them in the playoffs.
yeah. They look solid. If Tatum and Brown continue just to lead them the way they've been doing, like letting getting their team involved, and Marcus Smart he called them out and said, you guys are playing very selfishly, and it's not going to work. You guys can definitely score, like, and you need that scoring, because we just saw again Tatum just had that unbelievable, what, he had 50s 56 54 points.
Yes. Yeah, that was
So,
unbelievable.
he took it right to Brooklyn. So I mean, he's definitely capable of that throughout a series, and so is Jalen Brown. So you need those type of players, but like you said, play as a team with the chemistry, then you could be really scared. So the Celtics are very, very scary. And then even like I said, even now you talk about the Chicago Bulls, they're gonna get healthy. They've held it down so much, not without Lonzo Ball, without Caruso. They're gonna
Yeah.
get those guys back, and they're still in top four. So they're gonna be scary.
Yep.
That would be a really good series. Celtics Bulls, that'd be a really, really
Oh,
good
I think people
series.
want that. That's the guy.
Yeah,
That'd be yeah. If things stand as of now, that's going to be a really, really competitive series, I think.
yeah, very competitive. I'm looking forward to this playoffs. I'm very, very looking forward, especially in the East. We'll see what happens. So, Gabby, it's been a pleasure getting you back on. I've always enjoyed just our conversations, and just having you on always, and everything too. So let everyone know where they can actually follow you, follow the show, and what you got coming up the next couple weeks on the show as well.
Yeah, so Boston Balling is on a lot of different platforms. I mean, I'm on all forms of social media. Me personally, with my personal accounts, but you can also find the show's accounts on Instagram and Twitter. I do a live stream on Facebook every week, so that you can like the Boston Balling Facebook page to see the live stream of that. But it's also on Apple, Spotify, a bunch of other podcast listening platforms, so you can subscribe to it that way as well. YouTube, I have a YouTube channel. If people want to watch it that way. So there's a lot of different platforms that you can find it on. I have some exciting baseball, now that baseball's
Yeah,
officially back, and there's more we can talk about now. I have some exciting baseball talk coming up. I have some taking a look at NBA, like we talked about, like taking a look at kind of where things stand now, like where people think is which teams are going to be tougher to beat than others, where the Celtics are at now. So definitely an exciting next couple weeks on the show, because there's just so much going on right now in sports, and
yeah,
it's just a really, really good time to be doing podcasts, because there's just so much going on. So that's kind of what we're looking at there. I have some exciting guests coming up, so
yeah.
should
Sounds good.
definitely be fun. I think I always appreciate your support, Courtney, and I appreciate everybody else's support as well. I love doing it, and I'm just really looking forward to continuing to watch the progression as time goes on, and just continue to just have people support it.
Yeah, definitely. Everyone support Boston Ballin. Like I said, it's a great show. Gabby does tremendous work on it, and like I said, I really appreciate you always. Just the connection we have, and just talking sports and everything. And you already know, if you need anything, you need a guest or whatever, I'm always there as well. So, but looking forward to the content with, like I said, with the baseball, the NBA, the NHL. The NHL playoffs is coming up as well. March Madness, as we talked about. So
So
much
much.
stuff going on, so much stuff, and I know you're going to be diving into all of that. So looking forward to it, and again, enjoy the rest of the weekend, enjoy these games, and I'll be talking to you soon. Thanks for everything.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
All right, well, you have a good one. I'll talk to you soon.
You as well.
All right, bye. All right, that is a wrap for the show. I want to thank Gabby Hurlbutt. Follow her on all social media platforms. Follow her her podcast, Boston Ballin Podcast, on all social media and all podcast platforms. You could get it on Spotify, Google Play. It's everywhere. Like I said, she does a live show on Tuesdays or Wednesday evenings on Facebook. She also has great guests, not just all Boston guests, but just guests in general. So, like I said, she's loading up for baseball. And she's loading up, yeah, loading for baseball, loading for the NBA. I mean, there's so much going on. March Madness. Look out for all the content coming up on her show as well. So thank everyone that tuned in. Thank everyone on the Roku BS3 TV app. Download that app, BS3 TV on Roku. You can get all of our shows, BS3 Network, BS3 TV, BS3Network.com. Check it out. Check out all of our shows, sports, uh, comedy, social talk, spirituality, TV and movie reviews. We got a little bit of everything um, on the network. Like I said, we got a slew of shows. We just picked up more podcasts, picked up more shows, more content, and a great host, great family, just a great network to be on. BS3. Shout out to BS3 himself and Sutter. Um, for the platform and for all the things he's got that he has going on. So can't thank him enough. Follow the show. Follow me on social media, Courtney Harden, on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, CJ Harden 79. Um, the Real Deal with Courtney Harden. Google it. Follow it on all social media and all podcast platforms. We're everywhere. So again, I'm going to have content probably every day next week because of March Madness, or at least every other day. So continue to be locked in. Follow the journey. Follow the websites. Follow the follow all things social media. We're on Spreaker. We're on everywhere. We're everywhere. So just Google the Real Deal with Courtney Harden. So that's a wrap for the show. Again, thanks to Gabby Hurlbutt. Thanks to everyone in the comments and in the chat. Until next time, stay safe. Peace. God bless.